Just to kind of recap for y'all, at ClioCon 2025 this year, Jack did an opening keynote where he talked about a day in the life of an attorney now, after they introduced some of their products, how artificial intelligence was really ingrained into their product now and kind of goes across all of their lines. And he went through what a typical day would be. And it struck a bunch of us, I think, that this could feel like the future, like a distant future, like the Jetsons, this is not here, but it is here. This day is already upon us, So I wanted to kind of talk about that and the feasibility of it, and how do we get people to understand that we're living in the future, man. The future is now.
Well, I'll start by saying if you've got a software platform and it is, web-based and connects already to a lot of the work that you do, then the owners of that platform already have an amazing amount of capacity to tie AI into the work that you do. And I think that's exactly what we saw beginning to emerge at ClioCon. So what felt like science fiction for a while, which is, can this thing kind of live in the background, and can it, monitor what I do and help me improve what I do, or even do some of my processes in the background? Well, absolutely, because the website already had to sort of monitor and follow you around. It used to be by clicks. Now it's going to be by the system sort of understanding the flow that user wants to go through. And obviously, if you've made that product, you know a lot about the work that gets done in that product, right? So they've got all the data and the market research, the product experience, to be able to go to market and understand what the value is, to bring AI to those experiences and give you something that's really, really valuable that runs without you having to think or do a click. So yes, I think that day in the life of a lawyer, it's going to become part and parcel of a lot of these platforms now that can tie in AI into the existing workflows and technology that they're using. It's here. It's here to stay for those platforms, and it is coming for everything else.
So it's like I think one of the specific examples that was used is sitting down and saying, like, what does my week look like? So that's there. That information is there, is one of the things that you're saying.
That's exactly right. I mean, it's stored in the processes of the website itself, right? The way that you navigate it, the things that are tied to your user, that gets pulled out and surfaced day in and day out. All you'd have to do is, look at the logs a little bit, take a month's worth of that activity and be able to understand these are the pages the person loves. These are the functionalities the person loves. And these are the parts then that I should bring to their, user experience that makes this product even more valuable to them. So yes, absolutely. And that might feel sort of dystopian, that you're being constantly monitored and constantly followed. It's not like that has to be an active experience for them, right? But it is something where they can very quickly look and say, this group of users, they really like this, functionality, and we're going to tie some AI capabilities to that. And here's this other group of users, and they love to use these tools every week, and let's add some background processes for that. But they can individualize that very easily as well. They can do it at a group level. It's just a pretty fascinating time to see, unique product offerings kind of come through AI inside of these platforms.
And is that something that the lawyers want, Sam?
So when I saw the Clio keynote, right, I was thinking back to when I was actually practicing law, which was a while ago, and how much time I spent doing the little boring things like connecting things to other things, not doing like high level bespoke research, right? And, like you think of a lawyer in a library with the, glasses on their nose and, reading out of a giant tome. I was like typing things into forms or trying to navigate through the court's website to figure out when is this due? What's the right, header for this thing? And the more that these platforms can automate that process, I think the better off we're all going to be. There was a meme a while ago about AI where someone was quoted in the newspaper and said, I don't want AI to write poetry for me, right? I want AI to do the dishes. I want it to do the laundry. And I think that is a really smart play that Clio is doing, honestly, in this platform, is that they're saying, what is the stupid stuff that lawyers end up having to do? And I'm going to say it, and take it for what it's worth, but writing time entries, right? How much time do lawyers spend writing time entries every day that they could be doing other stuff, right? They're taking something they've already done and like translating it into, how am I going to get paid for this? Because their work is valuable. They're trying to communicate that value. But having something that can look over their shoulder and say, I'm going to write that for you. Yeah. And then you just look at it and correct it. That's amazing to me. And like I said, when I was practicing law, I had spent so much time doing like stuff that, wasn't really what I envisioned as lawyer work when I was in school or when I was studying for the bar. And if platforms like Clio can use AI to enable that, I think everyone wins, in my opinion.
I like that you use the time entry as an example, because one of the things that people I think are scared of is, and I think rightly so, is that this is going to mess up billable hours, and it is. But how are we going to deal with that is one of the questions. But entering your time is not billable. I can't, that would get way meta. I can't bill you for entering my billable time on your stuff. So like that's literally saving just admin time, and then the other thing is, and I think you've mentioned this before, and I really like how you said it, was allowing lawyers to work at the top of their license instead of, kind of at the bottom of their license. And yeah, like putting in my billable hours feels like the bottom of my license, really. But how do we...
Zach, can I just add one thing to that? It's the cost of it, doing it contemporaneously, is far less than the cost of it on January 6th when you're trying to remember what you did on December 1st.
Yeah.
And so it isn't even just the thing that lawyers often say that they hate most about their job is capturing their time. Mm-hmm. And it's not that there's a faster way to capture time. It's that it's going to capture your time, right? It's a little different nuance there.
Yes, I like that. And I kind of want to hang on that for a second, because there's a lot of tools out there that are saying, a faster way to capture my time, faster way to capture my time. But yeah, what you're saying is like, if it's sitting there, like Drew was talking about, if this is already tracking me through here, if I'm already doing my work in this thing, then, as long as we enable it, this is almost a natural progression of me just using, or a natural effect of me just using this product.
For sure. And, going back to what you said earlier about, do lawyers want this? I think there are a lot more lawyers that want this today than a year ago and 2 years ago. The struggle isn't that they want it. It's how do they get it, right? Because they look around their current platforms, their current systems, the current way they do business, the current way they bill, the current way they get paid. And there's misalignment. And that's the part that I feel like is the most exciting part of our jobs, is you're not going to leave on Friday and then show up on Monday and this is what it's going to look like, right? It's not going to be that fast.
Right.
But it can be iterative, right? And so we need to be moving in that direction, and we need to be taking care of our people along the way, because we don't have we don't need, we'll get more technology, but we don't actually need more technology. There's tons of it. Mm-hmm. But we need people to think differently about how they get their work done. We need people to be willing to be believers that there's a better way. We need people to lean into the technology. We need to be people to think about the business model. And that's going to enable us to do that, to work within that iterative process, to make things a little bit better all the time. And the technology is going to keep going, right? Mm-hmm. The finish line will keep getting moved. It's a race that doesn't have an end. And we got to start exactly where we are.
Yeah. So like that's interesting, because what kind of brought us to this is the idea of how do we get people to recognize that the Jetsons is already here. And I guess the answer is we didn't just fall into the Jetsons world. We're not just going to. We did not. But at the same time, we can't sit here and say, well, we're just going to stay in the Flintstones. Mm-hmm. So how do we get buy-in then from our attorneys, whether we're using the Clio platform or whether we're using SharePoint, or whatever? How do we get people, because that sounds like we're going to be constantly changing.
So listen, I know it's a little sidebar, and you can decide if you're going to cut this out or not, but I'm pretty sure there was a show when the Flintstones met the Jetsons. I'm pretty sure there was an episode of that, and we should go dig in to figure out what happened there, because I think we could draw lots of parallels from the current world we live in. Anyway.
Yeah.
Am I remembering that right? Do you guys remember that there was a Jetsons?
I think you're right. I remember as a kid, I mean, I sound older than I probably am, but I watched a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons like the Jetsons, the Flintstones. Yeah, like I remember that.
But that's the thing that you're kind of getting at, is that, like, okay, the Flintstones meeting the Jetsons is worth a show, because that's fascinating. What would happen? That's like Encino Man. What happens when you bring a caveman into, right now, which is not necessarily Brendan Fraser's best film, but it is up there. It is definitely up there. But we're not even doing that. We're iterating to the Jetsons, but yet I looked it up in preparation for this show when the Jetsons is set. And the Jetsons is set 2062. We are closer to the setting of the Jetsons than we are to when the Jetsons came out. And I don't think we realize that. I think that's the thing that's in my mind here, is like, we're there. We're at Jack's world, and what are we doing to make sure we feel like that? To make sure we are operating, using this technology, like, yeah, I don't know. That just fascinates me.
It does me too. And I think another dynamic in all of this that I hadn't really thought about before is, and we talk about this a lot with Lawyerist and Affinity, our small firm lawyers are speedboats. They can kind of figure out how to get there, and they can do it quickly. And a mid-sized firm is a little more challenging. Mm-hmm. And I think that some of that challenge is connected to, if you have 20 people, you are all at a different place in the line that we would draw from the Flintstones to the Jetsons, right? Not everybody starts in the same spot.
Yeah.
And so in a smaller firm, it's a little bit easier because there's less dots on the line. In a mid-sized firm, there's a lot of dots on the line. And you got to play to the lowest common denominator for some things. And for other things, you can experiment and go to the people who are further towards the Jetsons than the Flintstones. Mm-hmm. And the idea that firms can not feel bad about where they are, because I'm sure you all hear this like I do. I feel like we're so far behind. They don't have to feel bad about where they are, but they do have to figure out what's next.
Yeah, I like that, because you're right. If we sit here and say the Jetsons are here, nobody's looking at themselves going like, well, I'm in a flying car right now. There are very few law firms that feel like they are the Jetsons. And frankly, like, fine. There are some that are, way out there, but that's not the vast majority. And so, yeah, I guess, like, putting a caveat in here, you're not behind if you don't feel like the Jetsons, but that operational efficiency, that stuff is here that we can take advantage of.
I would also add, right, like the things that many of us want to stay the Flintstones for, right? I want the authenticity. I want the genuine human connection. I want the simplicity of the way that I work. Technology can now deliver that in some ways too, right? So it's also, for a lot of these firms that have felt resistance towards making that switch, it's kind of acknowledging that some of the benefits you can get from this vision is a reduced amount of context switching. It's an opportunity to spend more time focused on the things that really matter, and that's how you then deliver that human connection, the things that you might value your practice around, that you thought technology was an antagonistic force against, and now it might actually be a partner in. And I think that reimagining also needs to kind of begin happening and spread around as well.
I just to jump in, I do think that these kinds of systems that we're seeing come out that can automate the boring stuff for lawyers gives lawyers an opportunity to re-examine their role as a counselor. That was one of the original titles for lawyers is you counsel your clients. Lawyers are called counselor. In the Jetsons, since we've been talking about the Jetsons, George Jetson's job at Spacely Sprockets, I think it was he pushed a button. That was pretty much it. So, we need to figure out how to not become George Jetson, where we are just literally sitting at a desk and pushing a button all day and watching the computer do its thing, but actually be counselors as lawyers, spend time delivering value to our clients. Now, the idea of value, I don't think is going to change all that much. Lawyers are still going to be looked to fulfill the role of counselor. Mm-hmm. But the tools that we use to deliver value have changed dramatically and are going to change as we move forward, at least in my mind.
Sorry, I'm supposed to keep these things going. I just started thinking about the pushing the button, and I'm like, that's what we fear.
Yes,
right?
That's so good. That's so good. I'm like putting my LinkedIn post. I'm putting my LinkedIn post together. I've already got the graphic for the Jetsons meet the Flintstones. It really did happen in 1987.
And so how do we? I think that's the thing. Is at the beginning of this conversation, it's how do we tell everybody that we're at the Jetsons, but it's also we're not. We don't want to be like, yes, I want to be able to go over to a little area, press a button, and here's my food, or whatever. Like there are some helpful things that I want out of the Jetsons. Like that's why it was fascinating. But I don't want to be the guy that just pushes the button. And I think that scares the shit out of attorneys.
Yeah.
And somewhat rightly so, right?
But that's, I think, something that we need to lean into, right? The human connection. And I just read an article on LinkedIn about the popularity of conferences, the in-person meetings, how it's at 2025 an all-time high from an attendance perspective. People want that human connection. And where you can and should press the button, you should identify all of those things. We could connect this back to the client defines the value. For everything the client doesn't see as valuable, we should be figuring out how to just press the button for it. For everything that the client defines as valuable, we should not figure out how to press the button for it.
Yeah, I like that. That makes sense. Yeah. Can we press the button on the right things? Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think this also kind of harkens back to what we were discussing last week, which is that AI doesn't have the semantic understanding that we have. It is not ever going to replace, at least as far as I can see, it's not going to replace our thought process as attorneys, our deep thinking as attorneys, as business owners, any of this. It can sit here and be our little sidekick, but we're not going to pass off real deep thinking to it anyway. So yeah, like what are all the little button pushing moments that let us get further into our deep thinking?
There's a string to pull on there, Zach.
There is. So, okay. To finish this one off, because I can't just keep talking to you guys all day, unfortunately. What is the Jetsons moment right now with that you're using AI for, that you're excited about? The thing that you're like, man, I can't believe it does that for me. And it doesn't have to be law related. Mine, honestly, I use it to do to create recipes. I'm like, here's the stuff I have. Let's do this. And then I'm able to iterate in and through that recipe and say, well, I don't have that. I don't have that thing. Can we adjust it to do that thing? And I think of that as a way to imagine it being my thought partner, is that like, I mean, I kind of have to figure out what I want out of this thing, but it can create and iterate in real time on a recipe that I'm making as like I've made mistakes in the recipe and said, how can I fix this as we go? And that's like mind blowing to me. That's fascinating. That's beyond the idea of a recipe. That is like a little cooking thought partner.
I mean, I'll give you a personal example too. You guys know my husband was diagnosed with throat cancer in June of 2025, and we had a real doctor, we had oncologists, we had the whole team, but we also had chat. And every single thing that happened, every meeting, I asked for permission from the doctor to record the meetings. I uploaded all the recordings. I uploaded all the test results. I said, if I wanted to look at this on the bright side, what would I be thinking? If I want to look at it on not the bright side, what should I be thinking? Like, don't give me medical advice. You know what I mean? Like, just, but explain this to me in layman's terms. I don't know what that word means. I am smart enough to know that ChatGPT cannot be my doctor.
Right.
But it was an amazing thought partner in navigating that journey, even to the point where Dan was in the middle of treatment and he was really struggling. And I went to chat and I said, he is really struggling. I need you to write something like a manifesto that's going to help him get through the next 4 weeks. And here's everything you need to know about Dan. And it wrote that. And I sent it to him and he was like, that was amazing. Like, I could go on and on.
Yeah.
But it really, really, it was, I don't know how I would have done that. Right. It was really a George Jetson moment for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Sam, what's your Jetson moment?
Had to unmute myself.
So
for me,
unmuting is the thing that I want from it, you know.
There you go. Yeah. So for me, it's like, I've been using it to help me synthesize information in new ways. And that sounds really fancy, but so I'm like the Cub Master for our Cub Scout troop, and I lead like the Webelos Den. My youngest son is a Webelo. And I have to come up with activities for us to do at the Cub Scout meetings. And fortunately, a lot of that is online. And I've in the past, I've struggled with how do I, create a game to do this? And so it's really helpful for that. But I've also started having it just help me visualize information and create these little one-time use dashboards where I can say, we're going on a cookout, on a camp out, Zach, to your point about recipes, create a recipe planner, make it interactive for me, where I can adjust the number of people coming, right? And it'll show me what I need to buy for spaghetti and meatballs, or for chili, or for burritos, and it's a new way to me of synthesizing that information. When ChatGPT launched, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it was just text, and then they added voice, and then they added, it can create images, but now it can create these web tools almost. And you can ask it, help me, I'm cooking out for between 20 to 30 people at a campground. Here's the equipment I have, right? Here's the 3 meals I'm thinking about doing. I'm trying to decide between them. Give me an interactive way to make this decision and see what it does. And then, I'm borrowing this from Ethan Mollick. Once it gives you a result, say, how could you make this better? And it'll tell you, here's some suggestions, for making this thing better. And then say, do, options 1 and 5 and see what it does. It's remarkable what it can do. And it's a new way of synthesizing that information for me, because I'm a kinetic learner, I guess. I learned that in school. Okay. I probably also have severe ADD, but truly. But being able to see all that stuff in one place is really, really nice. And, to make a decision, just for something dumb like a camping cookout menu in that kind of dashboard is great.
I like that a lot. But both of these things feel to me like, okay, well, we're sitting down and we're talking to Rosie,
Right.
I'm going to talk to Rosie and I think that's a really good way to envision this, these tools, is I wouldn't have the robot make decisions for me. but I would totally talk to it, and I would totally use it for its massive amount of data. So, well, I think we probably need to wrap up there on all those things. I really appreciate y'all talking to me about these, and I would suggest maybe that people go and use, if they want to figure out how to get their firm from zero to the Jetsons. We have AI resources on our website, but B, you can go to ChatGPT and say, how do I get my people from zero to the Jetsons? And see what it tells you. Hopefully it'll cite us.
Yeah.
Well, y'all, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Zach.